You want to create your first Rails application. In this AWS Rails tutorial, we're going to walk through how to create a simple Rails 6 application. We're finally getting into Rails. Took a little bit of setup there with the Amazon stuff, so before we can feel comfortable moving on to Rails and then working on integrating the different pieces together, but I'm excited to finally get there. I'm Thomas with Brain Trust Digital. I'm a full stack developer obsessed with learning. If you're interested in learning full stack, please subscribe below to receive new content. The specific Rails application that we're going to create is the AWS Rails tutorial website. So in the past, we've had tutorial videos that I'll link in the card here and the description below, where we created this as a static website. Now that we have a static website, we're going to move on to an actual Rails-based dynamic website. The website's going to be very, very simple. It's just going to be video tutorials, or links rather, to our YouTube video tutorials. And then we'll build this out iteratively, adding various features as we see fit. I've got a lot of ideas for features like device users, email, all kinds of stuff. But if you have requests, leave them in the comment section below so I can make sure to cover various topics if you need that. So one last thing we have before we get started here is the requirements. The only requirement is just a computer that you can create your application on. I'm using a MacBook Pro, but at this point the technologies have come so far that I don't think there's much difference between Windows or Linux from a Ruby on Rails perspective, so you should be fine with whatever OS platform you're using. With that out of the way, let's get into the AWS Rails tutorial. Before we get started, I just wanted to point out that this video is geared towards beginners. So I've included timestamps for convenience so that if there's a portion of this video that you already understand, you can just jump around using the timestamps and skip to the portions that you need. If you are a beginner, I would recommend you just watch the video straight through. As a beginner, I often found myself getting lost in the cracks where one tutorial ended and the next began. So my hope is to alleviate this pitfall for newer developers and avoid the frustration that created for me personally. With that said, I'll be covering a lot of topics, so I'm going to be moving relatively quickly so that we can get this accomplished in a reasonable amount of time. So if there is a topic that we need to cover more in depth, just let me know in the comment section below. First, we will install Homebrew, which is described as the missing package manager for macOS. The website is brew.sh. And if you've never used the package manager before, it's just a piece of software that automates the way you install, update, configure, and remove other packages of software. So to install Homebrew, it's very simple. You're going to open up your terminal and paste in this command here. We're going to paste in the command. This will install Homebrew. And then you know that Homebrew has successfully installed. If you clear the screen and type in brew, we see the various commands that we can pass to brew to install our packages. Now that we've successfully installed Homebrew, we're going to use the brew command to install rbenv. Rbenv is a version manager for Ruby. So basically this just makes it easy for you to have multiple Ruby environments on the same machine and effortlessly switch between those environments. You can find rbenv on GitHub here at github.com/rbenv/rbenv. and learn more about it. We're just going to skip down to the installation section. So here you're going to copy the command, brew install rbenv. In my case, I already have it installed, but if you're running this for the first time, it may take a few minutes to get everything installed in your machine. Then the next step you're going to want to do is skip down here and rbenv init in your terminal. You're actually going to want this init command to occur every single time you start up your terminal, which is why they paste this comment here below to have this occur automatically for you. If you're a beginner on macOS, your operating system comes pre-installed with a bash profile. So you're going to copy this command here, paste that in. In my case, I'm not going to run it since I use ZSH, but you just hit enter. To ensure this command runs, you want to quit out of your terminal application and reload it, as you see here in step 3. Next, you can verify the installation with rbenv doctor. So you're going to copy this command here, paste it in your terminal to ensure that everything is installed correctly. As you can see, everything's installed correctly, so we're good to go. Next, we're going to install a version of Ruby. So you can see by just typing rbenv and hitting enter, the various commands that you can pass to this package. And here we're going to use the install command. rbenv install. In our case, we're going to be installing Ruby 2.7.1. Hit enter. If you get a message like this, you just need to update Ruby build. So you're going to copy and paste the command again, hit enter. This will update homebrew as well as Ruby build, which is an underlying package of rbenv. So once that completes, we can just hit the up arrow a couple times and then rerun our command to install Ruby version 2.7.1. This is going to take a little time to install, so I'll probably just pause this part of the video, and once this completes, we'll pick back up with the next steps. Now that rbenv has finished installing our version of Ruby 2.7.1, you can type in rbenv to see your version of Ruby. Well, wait a minute, you can see this is different. In this case, it's putting out the current version of Ruby as 2.6.3. So why is that? Your version may be different. What's happening here is that the Mac operating system comes with Ruby pre-installed, so you will get a version when you type rbenv. While we've installed Ruby 2.7.1, we're not currently set to use that. So we have to tell rbenv which version we want to use. So you can check the versions on your local machine by typing rbenv versions. So here you can see all the versions available to your current machine. In my case, this is the output. Your output may be completely different, especially if you're a beginner, you won't have as many versions. So you can see there is version 2.7.1, the one we just installed. To set this as the global version, we can just type rbenv global 2.7.1. Now when we type rbenv again, now you can see that we're targeting the version we want as our default. Next, we're going to install Bundler. You can find the website for Bundler at bundler.io. Bundler provides a consistent environment for Ruby projects by tracking and installing the exact gems and versions that are needed. Ruby packages that you will use are called gems. These gems have many versions, so Bundler just ensures that you don't have to worry about the various versions and dependency of the gems you want to use. Bundler will just handle all that for you. So to get started, we're going to run gem install bundler. And anytime you use rbenv to install a new version of Ruby, you will also have to rerun the command gem install bundler so that you have the bundler gem available for that specific version of Ruby. That should complete pretty quickly. Now that we have bundler installed, we can install Rails. This might take a little bit of time because there's several dependencies to install here, so I might just pause the video while this is completing. Now that we have the Rails 6 gem installed, you can confirm that by typing Rails without any arguments, and you'll get a list of various options and flags that you can pass to the command. There's a lot going on here, so you don't need to worry about that right now. There's just one more thing we want to do before generating our new Rails app. Rails comes bundled with the SQLite database by default, but we don't want to use this as SQLite is not something that's made for like production usage. So instead, we're going to use PostgreSQL. You can install Postgres via brew using the brew install PostgreSQL command, and you hit enter. In my case, I already have it installed, so it's just going to skip there. So that will install the software to run Postgres on your machine. But there's one last piece you want to paste in here. I'll link this in the description so you don't have to type this out by hand. But basically what's happening here is this will restart the Postgres database engine every time you restart your machine by attaching it to the launch agents. So you don't have to worry about starting it. It's just always going to work for you and you'll never have to worry about that. I also already have this, so I'm just going to break out of that and clear the screen. All right, so now we're ready to create our Rails app. To create a new Rails app, you type in Rails new, then the name of your application. So ours is going to be AWS Rails. We're going to pass one flag, D, which is for database, and we're going to use that new PostgreSQL and hit enter. So this will install all the files and gems and configuration necessary for our Rails app. Now that our app is created, we can cd into it, AWS Rails, and run Rails S to start the server. Once the server started, you can see it's up and running on port 3000. So we'll switch over localhost 3000. And We get a fatal error. Database does not exist. So we'll flip back over. At this point, I typically open another tab. So you can have one tab running your server process and a second tab where you're issuing your various Rails commands. Hit Command D and then they'll be side by side like this. Okay, so we'll switch into AWS Rails again. And then we're gonna run Rails DB :setup. So this will create our database for us. There's some extra warnings in here since we're using a fairly new version of Ruby 2.7.1. But here you can see the development and test database were successfully created. So if we flip back over and refresh our page, you can see serving our new Ruby on Rails application. So this landing page looks great, but we want to serve our own content, so let's create our landing page. Clear the screen here, and we're going to use the Rails generator. So you can do Rails generate or Rails G for short. In this case, we're going to generate a controller, and we're going to call it pages. The pages controller is going to have a home action, and this is how we're going to handle all of our static pages under the pages controller. We'll just make an action for each static page that we want to serve up, like a contact page or an about type page. We're also going to open this up in Sublime Text, and we will go into the routes and set our default route. You can visit this page if you need to learn about the route, and you'll spend a lot of time when you're learning getting used to reading the Rails documentation, so you'll definitely want to get comfortable here. But we're looking for the root route. The root route is just where you want Rails to go. So our base default page, you can use the syntax here, pages to, or shorthand here, just root, and then the controller in action. So in our case, that would be pages #home. If we flip back over, we'll close this out and refresh, reload the page. Now you can see we're serving our home page. Since this is the site we're replacing, we're just gonna pull in all of this content and paste it into our home page so that our Rails app can begin serving all of this content for us. So I've got the site here, and we'll open this content up. Sublime Text, just paste it in here, and I'll show you how to pull all this static content into our website. One more thing we want to do here is grab all of the assets. So an easy way to open up the current folder is just open and then dot. And then we're going to go into the assets here. And we'll drop in some of our we'll drop in our image assets. Here, just the one. Move that over there. And styles, we'll probably want to clean this up, but for now, we'll just drop it in. Okay, we can close these out. We're going to go back into Sublime and take our static index page that we deployed when we created a static S3 site. And we're going to now put this into our Rails template. So it's just sitting here in an empty document. Instead, we're going to go into our app, views, pages, home. And we'll just put content inside the body here. So we'll just grab all of the body content out. We'll cut that, and then we'll paste it here, save. Everything outside the body, we're going to put in here. You'll see this is auto-generated layouts. So this is the default application layout template. Views, layouts, application.html.arb is the base template for all of your views. Home will use this, or any other page you create will use this as a default unless you tell Rails otherwise. So this handles our basic HTML structure, our style sheet linking, our JavaScript file linking, and then yields to the body. So this yield here inside of the HTML body is where our homepage content will get inserted. Just to keep things clean, we're gonna rename this home. We're gonna name it SCSS. Okay, so if we flip back over to our app and refresh, you can start to see that we're getting some content. As you can see, our site looks a little rough right now. It doesn't have all the same styling that our live site has. To fix this, we just need to drop in a CDN link to the style sheet for the Bootstrap framework from getbootstrap.com. There are better ways to integrate Bootstrap into a Rails application, but for now we're just trying to get up and running real quick. So we're going to just grab the CDN link here, go back to our local site, and then we're going to open up our application layout and just paste it up top. And in the future, this is definitely not a best practice. This is not the way you want to do this in the future. And we're going to probably do this in a separate video just because installing Bootstrap the proper way takes a little bit of time. So we can just figure out the basics of a Rails app and not focus too much on Bootstrap specific things. So we'll drop this link into the application layout, flip back over and refresh. And it looks a lot better. We're almost there. We almost have the same page that we did on our statically hosted website. So if you scroll down here, you can see that we have one issue. This image isn't quite working. So let's flip back over and go into the home view and find the image. So as you can see, here's the image. And we do have an image in our assets image with the same name. The problem here is that the path is no longer working. And we could try to correct this path, but instead let's just use the Rails image assets helper tag. So we'll just drop down a line and we're gonna open some ERB tags, which is just embedded Ruby. And we're going to use the image tag. And we'll just give it the name, AWS Rails coming soon. And then we can give it our class as well. We can get rid of this image up here. We'll save, flip back over to our local app, refresh, and there we go. Cool, so we're up and running. We've got our home page here. The next thing as you kind of scroll through is maybe we want to extract this header element, this AWS Rails header, and the footer out into separate partials. While we are using them on the home page, we might also keep this footer consistent across the site and maybe the header as well. So we'll pull those out into partials, and that'll help us get a little bit more organized, and it'll allow us to reuse these components in other templates. So we'll flip back over, and this is kind of how I like to start, just kind of get everything in there, get it live, get something that looks like you want it to, and then you can start to extract your templates as you see fit. First in the views, we're gonna make a shared folder for all these partials that we use across multiple templates. So we're gonna click new file and type shared. And then within here, we're going to create the footer partial. And you're gonna wanna prepend your partials with an underscore. This is just a Rails convention so that it knows that this is a partial to be used in other templates. .html.erb. So we're gonna call this. Okay, so we'll delete this content here, and then we're gonna go down to our home page and just grab everything in the footer. And we'll just grab these hard-coded links that to the jQuery CDN and to the Bootstrap CDN. Again, these are something that we can improve, and we want to use Rails to serve these things in the future, but for now we're just going to have them hard-coded to the CDN endpoints so that we can just kind of get up and running quickly. So we'll cut this content out, we'll paste it into the footer, we'll save that, and then instead where this content was, we're just going to include some ERB that tells Rails that we want to render this footer, this new footer template. So we'll render, path is going to be shared footer. While the path here is actually shared underscore footer, when you make your call to render the partial, you're just going to say shared footer. It's important to notice the spelling here. When we pass our path, you don't pass the leading underscore, even though that's how you should name your partials in your folder. So we'll save this. The page shouldn't change. It'll look exactly like it did, but now we have extracted this partial into something that's more reusable. That way, if we have this in several pages and we go to change some content in the footer, it'll just change across all of the pages, making it much easier for us to update. So next, let's extract the header. We'll grab out the content here. We're going to put another ERB render partial statement. This time we're going to call this shared header. So we'll save that, and then we'll create the new file, paste that in, and save this as header, underscore header dot html.erb. Okay, then we'll refresh our page and we're good to go. Same thing applies there as the footer. Now this header is more reusable. We can use it in different places, but we only have one place where we have to change it across all of them if we want to make some changes here. Okay, now we've got our homepage working, but that's basically static content, right? There's no real advantage to using Rails to serve this versus just our static S3 hosted website. So let's go ahead and add videos. Then we'll add a link to videos and we can list them all out and allow users to click through and watch the different videos. So we're gonna go back into the terminal and we're gonna use the generator again. This time we're not gonna be generating a controller, we're gonna generate a scaffold. So we can do Rails generate, or G for short. We're gonna type in scaffold. We're going to generate a video scaffold. Before we hit enter, we're gonna pass in a few of the database columns that we want to create on the video model. In our case, we're gonna have a title, which is a string, and we're going to have a YouTube ID, which is also going to be a string. One thing to note, string is the default data type, so it's optional to add that. Lastly, we're going to add a position so we can sort these, and we'll make that an integer. Once we have that, we're going to hit enter. It'll generate everything we need. Flip back over to our application and open the database and look at the migration that was generated from our scaffold command. So here you can see the title, YouTube ID were both created as strings, and then we have an integer position. Next, we need to run the migration to get all this into Postgres. Again, you can see we're getting lots of warnings as Rails 2.7.1 is really new at this time, but you can see that we've successfully created the videos table. If you flip back over the application and look in your schema file, you can see we now have a table of videos that has a title, string, and YouTube ID of type string, and a position of type integer. It's important to note that you don't want to edit the schema file. This is something that's generated and updated by Rails. This is just a place where you can look to see the state of your data. So you're never going to want to make changes in here, as any call to rake db migrate would just wipe those changes out. Part of using the Rails generator to create our video scaffold was that we also got some routes. So to see the available routes on your Rails application, you can just run Rails routes. But if you scroll up here, you can see here's our pages home action, and then we got all of our RESTful video routes. Routes follow the pattern, controller, hash, action. So you can see we have videos index, videos create, videos new, and so on. You can also see the prefix verb, whether it's a get or a post or a patch or a delete, as well as the URI pattern. So here in this case, it's videos or /videos/new. If we visit the videos endpoint, you can see our videos page with a new video button. If you click on the new video button, the scaffold generator has already created a form for us to easily add and edit videos. I'll quickly go through and populate all of our YouTube videos. Okay, now that we've added all our videos, you can see the default is just to output these into a table and display all of our new content. But this doesn't really look like our homepage. So we're gonna make some changes here. So we'll flip back over to our application in your text editor of choice. And you can see now Rails has added the app views videos folder containing various video partials and templates that we can use for styling. So you could go into the index template and add the render partials for our header and footer. But since we're already using them on the home page, and we're probably just going to want to use them on every page, we could instead just move those up to our application template. So instead we'll go into the home page and we're going to grab the header, we're going to cut that, and instead paste it inside the body just before the yield command. Next, we'll go back into the home page, clean this up a little bit, and we'll grab the footer template. We'll save this, cut it, and then paste it just below the yield command. Every time that Rails is going to render a page, it will output all of this content, then it will render our header, then we'll yield to whatever page we're displaying, the home page in the first example, and then our video page in the second example, and then it will render our footer. When we refresh the page, you can see that our header and footer are now present on the video's index page. But you can see that something's a little bit off with our header. When you run the scaffold generator, Rails also generates some styling. And in this case, we don't want that styling, so we're just going to remove it because it's conflicting with our own styling. So if you go into Assets, Style Sheets, then you can see this auto-generated file here, scaffolds, and some of these styles are conflicting with our styles. So in this case, we're just going to delete this file. And we're not currently using the Pages style sheet, so we're going to delete that as well just to keep things clean. We might use videos in the future, so we'll just leave that for now. We'll flip back over and refresh the page. You can see that fixes our issue. I just wanted to point that out just to make sure, in case you generate a scaffold, some of these styles are different than you expect. That may just be that auto-generated scaffold file. So now that the header and footer look good, the next thing we want to do is clean up the video views. The first thing I want to do is just get rid of all the base styling here. So we're just going to get rid of the table structure while keeping all the auto-generated embedded Ruby code. So let's just kind of clean this up and remove most of the styling that Rails put in there for us. Okay, next we don't want to display the position, so we're just going to get rid of that line entirely. We'll use that later for sorting. Okay, so now we have a little bit more of a cleaned up view. It's going to appear kind of messy though when we output it onto the page. The next thing I typically like to do is extract my single element into a partial. What I mean by that is you have all of the videos here. You're looping through in Ruby code each of them and calling that single instance, in each case, video. And then you're saying within that loop what you want to output. Video title, the YouTube ID, and some links. So I like to take this inner part and extract that into a partial. I just find that that helps me keep things clean and organized. You can use a nice trick if you follow Rails convention by naming your partial the singular form of the model. So in videos, we'll create a new partial that we're going to call _video.html.erb. Let's save that, and then we're going to fill it with the content of our single video instance. But this won't work because we're not rendering anything inside of our loop yet. We still have our video pulled out to a partial, but we're never calling that partial. A nice way to keep this really clean is to render the collection. So it's important to note that we have our video partial named as _video, the singular form of the collection. And as long as we follow that convention, we can say render videos, and Rails will understand that we want to iterate over this collection of videos and then use the singular form as the template to output each instance of that collection. So if we refresh, you can see everything still works. It's obviously not styled yet, so it doesn't look great. So let's work on that now. I just want to take a second to say that I hope you're finding some value in this video. And if you are, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for future content. If you do, we got a limited time offer here. All subscribers reward my coworker, Bear, with one treat. The goodest boy ever. So hit that subscribe button. Yeah, there we go, buddy. So again, inside of our video partial, let's just give this we'll give this an h3 tag, and then maybe we'll wrap the entire thing in a div, just to get a little bit of styling to clean this up a bit. Okay, next, instead of just displaying our YouTube ID code, let's display an embedded player. So we'll go over to YouTube and then click on share. We'll click on embed, and we'll grab the embed code. We'll flip back over to our partial, and we'll paste this embed code. Now here you can see the YouTube ID for the video that we're embedding. In this case, we want this to be dynamic. This is a specific code for a specific video on the channel. So we're going to replace that with our YouTube ID variable, like so. Then let's just clean up, and then we'll refresh. And there you have it. All of our videos are dynamically displaying their YouTube embed links. So we're not going to do a ton of styling here, but just to clean this up a little bit, we're going to give this single video some bootstrap classes to make it look a little bit easier to scan our content. So here we're going to add a class of call6. So this uses a Bootstrap uses a 12-column grid, so we're going to just say each video should occupy half of the available columns. And we'll go back to our index page. We're going to wrap this in a div. So we'll have a wrapper around all of the videos in the list. We'll give that the class of row. That'll clean up the layout of our videos just a little bit. We'll wrap this in one more div to have a container around everything so it's not quite so close to the edges. We'll wrap this in a container fluid, actually, so it fits in with the other partials, the header and footer partials. And then you can see that little bit of margin there on each side. So not the prettiest page, but we're just trying to get something up and running. So the last thing we want to do before we close out here is just add a couple of links so that you can jump between the home page and the videos list. So we'll go into the header, since this is already embedded in both templates, and we'll add our links. So maybe right here in the content, we can just add another paragraph. So in this case, we're going to use the link to helper. The first thing you're going to pass this helper is the string that you want in the link text. So in ours, we're going to want it to say home. Then we're going to pass the path that we want this link to go to. In our case, home is the root path. If you forget your named paths, you can flip back over to the console and run your Rails routes command. Here you can see your named path in this center column. You just need to append an underscore path. So in this case, root path and videos path underscore path are the routes we're going to use. So there we have the root path. We'll just put a pipe character separating, and then we'll do another link to. In this case, we want to go to the videos string, and we'll pass the videos underscore path. Since we're doing this in the header partial, this will appear on all pages that partial is included. In our case, that's home and videos. So we'll refresh. Now you can see our new links. We can click through to home. Then you can see we're on the home page, and click back through to videos. This is our base AWS Rails application. In future videos, we're going to continue to clean up the styling, and then we'll add features like device users. We'll walk through a Capistrano deployment, setting up a server in Amazon, and then we'll continue to just build up iteratively through various videos, different parts of this application. Please remember to like and subscribe. This really helps out the channel, and feel free to leave questions or requests in the comment section below. Also, if you have features you'd like to see added to this application, just let me know in the comment section below. I've got tons of ideas on various pieces that we can add, and tons of different integrations between AWS services and Rails that we can utilize. But I'd love to hear ideas that you guys have, or services that you'd like help integrating. So with that, I'll catch you in the next AWS Rails tutorial.